Right. So a special good afternoon. Welcome to the NEBOSH Process Safety Management course. Today we are on chapter one, finishing off what we started last week, and we may get a start to chapter two. So last night I said I'll email you the PowerPoint then because it looked as if we could finish off chapter one today, and it didn't make sense sort of wasting the time, right? It would have made better sense to start chapter two, right? So I sent the PowerPoint for chapter two around last night anyway, right? Not too sure the time could have been after 8, right? Um, so thanks for joining in. I was saying there are just two things I want to mention that is important. Well, I mean, the two main things is that this is not an open book exam. You're going to have to study a bit. I don't think with these sort of exams that the class is all that there is then, right? I think that you have a textbook and you have the course notes and you need to study certain things so that you can get through the final exam. The other part of it is that the exam is on an online platform. So you'll have to have a good laptop with a webcam to do the final exam. Unlike the NEBOSH certificate exam, we do have a lot of NEBOSH students here. But unlike the NEBOSH certificate exam, where the exam is not supervised, the process exam is supervised, right? So when you log onto the platform, you have an hour and a half to get the exam done, right? From the time you start, which will take some time, the actual time to set up and stuff may take about 2 hours or so. Well, a half an hour extra, right? Like when you log on, uh, they have to do a little check of your computer screen, make sure you have no open documents. They have to scan your room a bit and you have to show an ID on screen. So once that is finished, that takes people sometimes 5 minutes, but I've said half an hour. Should there be any open icons on your screen? And then there is a software that it takes about 30 seconds to download that takes control of your screen so that NEBOSH will monitor you. And other than that, the questions come up one by one. The logistics part of it is quite simple. Once you have a suitable laptop for the final exam, right? So there's two things there that this is the NEBOSH course, of course, but um, unlike the level 3, where it was an open book exam, this is not an open book exam. I would advise everybody to during the course of the week, carry your textbook with you. Start, looking at it, start running through some stuff, start becoming familiar with it. The book is a very nice read, and also the PowerPoint is a very nice read as well, right? So not everything then that we say, but we are not NEBOSH, right? So we have made this clear to everybody that that NEBOSH is in the UK, which is why you are here. You are here to get a globally recognized certificate. A nice Sunday course is how I said it last week, right? A nice Sunday course. It's not too tough, right? It's not a lot of writing, but it's learning. And the fact that it's learning means that you can't just rely on an hour and a half video to sort of get it done, right? So it's a nice book. Take a read of it. We're going again today, and you'll be able to get through the final exam. So some of the pluses with the exam is that you don't have to get everything correct to pass. It's 24 correct, and you pass 24 out of 40 and you pass the exam. Of course, most people get more than 60. 60 marks is the pass mark, but most people end up in 70s or 80s who study anyway, right? So if you are here and for some reason you don't have your book, I know I have some folks in Guyana. You could read through the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is just as good. The book and the PowerPoint is the same thing. Last, for those who are here, you would have seen that if you have the book, you have the PowerPoint. If you have the PowerPoint, you have the book and vice versa. In fact, some things in the PowerPoint is way more detailed than it is in the textbook, right? I've put more examples in the PowerPoint that they have in the textbook. So you have what you need to have, right? And for the first year this course ran, it didn't actually have a textbook, right? The first year the course ran in 2017, NEBOSH didn't write a book. So a lot of people passed, we had 100% passes. So I mean, if that isn't proof to you that the PowerPoints were always approved and good, then I don't know what will be, another substitute then for the textbook, right? So let's make a start. So last week we looked at I'm not gonna recap. We looked at the video is on the group chat, so you could always look back at it. So we did what is process safety, how it differs from personal safety. We actually looked at also well the role of leadership. This is the slide that I'm on here, the role of leadership, right? And we looked at the importance of this chart and you knowing the importance of that chart. Organizational learning, why was it better to learn from the mistakes of other companies than having to learn from yourself? Anybody can remember the main reason for that? Why is it better to learn from other companies than having to learn from yourself?
If
So
I avoid
you
making the same mistake.
right, avoid making the same mistake. And remember, with process safety, if you have one of those mistakes, what would happen to what could happen? So not what would happen, but what
It'll be
could happen to you?
catastrophic. It will be
Yeah, it's
catastrophic
catastrophic.
damage.
Very good, right? So there's multiple loss of lives, and you might be one of them. So the thing is, you can't wait for catastrophe on your plan because it will be, too late anyway, right? So I think we'll take it from we did some of that, right? I think we'll take it back from here. The purpose of benchmarking, right? So this is actually almost the same as um sharing lessons learned, right? And so let's read a bit first. I read about 2, 3 slides explain. This is actually too easy, but the purpose of benchmarking, right? So benchmarking is a way of discovering what is the best performance being achieved in the process safety industry. Benchmarking compares well, your business process safety performance matrices. So what is the industry best and best practices of other companies? Information can then be used to identify gaps in an organization processes in order to achieve a competitive advantage. The use of benchmarking to evaluate various aspects of one's process safety management in relation to the best practice that the companies are using to identify how they are doing against other similar companies, to identify why the performance is as it is, to drive applicable areas in process safety for improvement, to determine the best practice in asset integrity management and time scale for maintenance of such. But the last one is actually an example of benchmarking, right? I mean, that's like an example of a real thing that they benchmark, right? I have lots of examples I'll tell you on this slide, right? The use of benchmarking to determine the areas of improvement, such as the management of change. And again, that's another example with respect to PSM to determine and foster an environment of continual improvement with respect to process safety culture. So I'm not sure if you understand what I mean by this is an example. For those who don't know, if you have never heard about this phrase, the management of change, um, the simplest thing to tell you is that is a form. The management of change is like a document, is like a form, right? So like if anything would have changed or you would change something in your company, like you change a valve or you change a provider who wasn't your normal provider or that part that you bought, that piece of equipment that you bought wasn't your normal supplier then, right? You need to fill out a form, and the form is called management of change. So the user benchmarking they're saying here is just to determine, like what is the best practice where management of change forms are required then, right? Like what are the industries doing for management of change and process safety? Like what are they recording? Right? So the user benchmarking is always looking to see what the other companies are doing to get a competitive advantage and to do the same, right? One of the slides said to identify gaps, right? Discovering what is the best practice performance being achieved in the process safety industry. Well, I guess you all are here for a similar reason as that because the industries are doing this course, right? So you can take this course as an example of what NIBOSH has done then since 2017 to now. The process safety management course has become like an industry standard, right? We have hundreds of people train with it in Trinidad, hundreds of companies train with it, right? So even though Nibosh got in the process safety business, I think, in 2017. I think the course, because of the branding, because of that brand that Nibosh carries, the brand name Nibosh, it soon became what the companies were asking for, right? In fact, it was so shocking. Um, like I remember when, for those of us in Trinidad, I guess Trinidad and Tobago, like we have a state-owned company, or we kind of had, called Petrotrin. And Petrotrin, about 20, could be around the same time, 17, 18, was being rebranded then, or was actually being renamed or folded and being converted into something else. But I had just brought, right? I mean, 2017, I had just brought this qualification to the region. Trinidad and Tobago was the first to offer this qualification out of the UK. Of course, it's in Guyana and Grenada and stuff now, right? But like in that year, we or me, I didn't have any dealings with anybody. I didn't have any contract with Petrotrin. I didn't have any dialogue with them, which is Petrotrin was a state-owned company. Today it's called something. It's called Heritage. Heritage and Paria, right? But I didn't have any discussions with them. None. And when the Petrotrin, which was the older brand of the company, was being renamed and being, sort of, folded and renamed into another company, they had asked people to reapply. So everybody was kind of sent home and then you had to reapply. And the long and short of this is that we started to see process safety being asked for, process safety management. Now, you might wonder, well, what's so big about that? Well, the thing is, as I was telling you, it didn't have process safety in the region. So that was such a strange thing because to me, I don't know who it is did the vacancies, right? But whoever it was, this is somebody in Trinidad found out that the best practice is process safety management. But at the time, 2017, we had just brought the course to Trinidad. It was like September, and September was when Petrotrin was being rebranded. And they put process safety in it. I was thinking to myself, I mean, this have to be some kind of luck, or somebody did their homework, somebody in Petrotrin, Parian Heritage now, did some sort of research and they benchmark and they saw process safety management, NIBOSH process safety management being the benchmark. But what was weird in that was that if I didn't bring it in, like, okay, well, like when I say bringing a qualification to the region takes months, right? And in the months the 6 months before that, I had no idea what was going on with the state-owned company. So I was just telling myself, so if that didn't happen, then there would have been no one with process safety management knowledge, no one with the certificate. So who would have applied for that job, right? Well, you all know this story. Like I said, in that year, we had about 100 students, right? 100 people, companies, Atlantic, LNG, but I just call the former, Petrotrin anyway, right? And all of the subsidiaries came by and they got it done, right? So for those of us who are here, and if you're listening, behind the scenes, I'll tell you a secret now. I'm telling you a secret, right? Let's see what I have here. I don't think I have any. I don't think you all, I mean, it's in some of my classes, I have anyway, you all are good students, right? But I'll tell you a secret now, right? For those of us in the region here, Guyana, Trinidad, right now I am working behind the scenes to bring another qualification to the region. I do it ever so often, but one of the reasons is because eventually students end up having all the NIBOS certificates that we have there. Some of you are like that here, right? I have some students and you all have the level 3. I don't know if you all are live though. I don't know if they are live. So I'll shout them out still. I'm not seeing some of them on the live. But like I have Anissa here. So look, Anissa is one. I have Alim. I'm not seeing him on the live. I have Steffi. I'm not seeing her on the live. And some of you, like afterwards, like after three years, I bring something new, right? So um I am bringing, for those of us, like I said, I'll tell you the secret, right? I'm bringing oil and gas, the Nibosh oil and gas, right? And so I am pursuing that behind the scenes. It takes months, but I have done all of my part. My part is writing the PowerPoints, getting them approved, creating a schedule, applying for accreditation. These things takes months, but I've reached that stage now where the documents have been submitted for approval to NEBOSH, right? So I am hoping by July, August that we would launch the NEBOSH Oil and Gas Technical Certificate in Oil and Gas Management in Trinidad and Tobago and in Guyana. And the fun part about it, well, there's a kind of downside. But the fun part about it is two of the elements is process safety management. Two of the elements, and I don't have my textbook here, right? I have the textbook in the office, it's a textbook friend. But two of the elements is PSM. So those who do PSM will have a very good chance of getting through the oil and gas. The downside of the oil and gas, if it is a downside, I don't think these things are downside. I tell you that everything you do have to be worthwhile. So you cannot get a free certificate, then you have to earn it. If you just got a free cert, then it wouldn't worth anything. It wouldn't be worth anything, right? So the oil and gas is a written exam and it's not online. Well, when I say it's not online, the classes could be online, but the exam is face to face, right? So the folks in Guyana, we may have some challenges in giving the exam in Guyana, but for those of us in Trinidad, and I mean, the challenge is easily overcome. And we just have to come to Guyana and give the exam face to face in Guyana, right? But the exam is timed. I think it's 2 hours. You have to do 11 questions, but it's not on the platform then, right? In other words, it's pre-pandemic style. It's like where you come into a room, you sit down, they give you a booklet, you do the exam, right? And that's good for some people because a lot of people love to do the exams the old way. But the oil and gas, as far as I know, is still examined or it will be examined like how exams were before the pandemic, right? That is good. It's not too bad. Like I said, that could never be a downside because you want to show what you learn. You want to show what you learn. You want to do an exam. You want to earn the qualification. That is how it is, right? So anyway, back to my story here of benchmarking. And I'm telling you that oil and gas is the standard, right? That is the standard and process safety is the standard. So what I did on this slide here, and the other slide too, I put a whole bunch of like best practices then, right? So all of these could be best practices. So what's the best practice at process safety culture? Our workers trained in process safety management. What's the best practices? Hazard identification and risk analysis. Are they using the 5x5 matrix? What's the best practice of management of change? Are they following all the forms? And that's how it goes, right? These things are just examples anyway. Same thing here. All of these, this is more than the textbook. If you have the book, this is more than the book, right? So typical benchmarks in process safety management, process safety competence,
Cool.
right?
So
And
what?
the operators, do they have the
You bring
NEBOSH
them to you?
process safety management, right? For those of us who are here from Trinidad, I've just completed,
What are them?
right, I've just completed a training with our desalination company, Desalcot. Desalcot paid for a bunch of their operators to be trained in process safety management like a month ago, right? So when I say just finished, I mean just finished, right? So all of these, like, so the industry, they are looking to see what's the benchmark, right? They think you get all of this. I don't want to read all of it because they are just examples, right? You can just pick anyone and know what that's the standard, right? That's the standard for training, right? What's the standard for auditing? How many audits are being done in the process safety industry? What's the standard for contractor management? How much you have to get in a pre-qualification to become a contractor? Do they have to get 60%, 70%? So that's benchmarking for you. Tell me if you understand because it's the same thing over and over, and we can move to another concept. Tell me if you're okay. Look, they have a question here. Look how simple this question was. Benchmarking is used to identify good practices across similar committees, organizations, techniques, or procedures. Now, it don't have to be that easy, but this is a past paper. I could think of a harder question. I could literally make up a harder question than that, right? But this is what it is. That is a past paper, right? I could have said, like, what's the purpose of benchmarking? And the answer will be to measure up against what's the best practice so that, you could actually improve or, satisfy what the world is doing then with whatever you're studying. In this case, it's process safety. right? So more you think this is finished? I don't want to overdo the same thing over and over. But what y'all think again? It's a bit. You're live, you're out there, Sunday afternoon. Anybody? What do y'all think? You okay with that? You okay with benchmarking or you were sleeping?
Hey, sir. Good
Yes,
afternoon.
yeah,
Hi, good
well,
It's
afternoon.
it's Oliver. Um, I do have a quick question. If it's something that's new to the industry whereby you really don't have anything to benchmark the standards, how would we go about at least
I think
putting
it's
something in
I think it's
place?
just research. Well, it's just for somebody to do it. I mean, like the end of this lesson has a chart, but it's just to see, like you have to figure out, of course, like what you want to benchmark against. Is it how much risk assessments you want to get done for the year? Like how much permits you want filled out, how much inspections. You could take something simple, like how many inspections you want filled out for the day. Most will probably be three. So then you can research that, like what is Exxon doing, what is BP doing, and then that becomes a benchmark, right? If it's like one of the examples was maintenance of equipment, right? So there are three types of maintenance. There is, like breakdown maintenance, which is when you wait for something to break down, then to maintain. And most companies are not doing that. The best practice is that you have, like scheduled maintenance then. So if your piece of equipment, your vehicle, your excavator, your pumps, your valves, so those of us in Trinidad and maybe in Ghana, like you may have heard the term shutdown or turnarounds, right? So like, so how is it Atlantic LNG? Like how did they know to have two shutdowns a year or three shutdowns a year, right? So they would look at other gas industries and they would see, well, what's being done in Qatar, what's being done in the UK, right? And then if that valve then, those components tend to fail after 3, 4 months, well, then we're gonna have a shutdown, a turnaround, a maintenance period to replace them. So that's how you figure it out. And then you can chart it to the end of this PowerPoint, have a chart. You can chart what you want to measure inspections for, right? The standard is 4. So then what is your company doing? 2, but you should probably do 4 because the best practice is 4. Management of change, which is a form that is filled out. How much of those forms are being filled out, right? If the standard say it should be filled out for all changes, which is what we come into now. But what is your company doing? Well, you're not really capturing change, but then you should, right? So then that's how you figure it out, right? So you could compare against BP and Exxon and those kind of higher class companies then to get the standards anyway. In this case, training, like I said, Nibosh have that privilege. It's not really a privilege. I think it's something that they worked on of being the top brand. So if they came out with an oil and gas course, then that becomes the standard. If they have a process safety course, which they have, that becomes the standard. And I've told you some examples here in Trinidad, but worldwide, the fact that Trinidad was putting it on the vacancies was that we couldn't be the first because Trinidadians are not the first in anything. Well, beside then Calypso, right? But like we couldn't be the first to say, well, our vacancy was asking for Nibosh process safety when Nibosh is not even from Trinidad. It had to be that somebody did because I didn't even know, right? Somebody had to do some research to start asking for process safety management, which at the time I tell us it wasn't even in the country. So then that person who put it there, like, were they even aware that it wasn't in the country? Right? Okay, let's go to management. Was there another question? Thanks to the question though. So I think it's all good research, right? So here what I'll do, right? Let me read one slide. I think I'll explain this because we kind of touched this already. So what is management of change? We said this is a form, right? It's a form, like if you know about a JSA, a job safety analysis, a permit to work, this is also a form, right? So if you didn't know that, please write it down. A management of change is a form to fill out, right? So the management of change to properly manage change to process chemicals, technology, equipment, and facilities, one must define what is meant by change. So in this process safety management standard, change includes all modification to equipment, procedures, raw materials, processing conditions other than what you would normally replace. So that's change, right? So if let me go back to a process example. If you have a valve, and like I said, based on shutdown, the valve was to be replaced every 4 months. That doesn't require a management of change because that's just a normal replacement. If you have a pump and there's a seal, right? And most of you all know that. So they have a seal inside of it. Or you have catalyst, if you all know what that is. And after a period, after 4 or 5 months, it have to be replaced. It had to be vacuum out, right? So that's not a management of change because that's what you was always doing. That is what the normal life of the thing is. In other words, then we could use an example with your car. If you have a car battery, which you all have, even if it is a hybrid, right? And the battery, I'm talking about the older cars, there, right? But even if you have a hybrid, and the batteries have to be replaced, which is like your normal cars because the hybrids don't really have to, right? And it's like a year battery you got is like a 1 year warranty or a 3 year warranty. Well, and you change it. They change it, in the month it is supposed to change. But that doesn't require management of change. If it's a company, so we come back to a company vehicles, company vans, company trucks, that's not a management of change. But if in the year, if something happened, if in the life of it, before the normal replacement and something happened to it, well, then that requires a management of change. You understand that? If in the year then you had, let's use one for a procedure. If in the year you had the safety manager who signed your documents for a year is Shadrach, right? But in the year the person left the company, but the documents is good for a year, but that person is no longer in your company. So then that requires a management of change. All of those documents that were signed have to be taken back now into consideration. And the new HSE manager have to sign it. It is anything that changes other than a replacement in kind. If you understand that, there's no need to read anything else. All the rest of them is just examples of what this is saying, right? All of these are examples, right? What could cover management of change? Change in technology, change in equipment, change in instrumentation, right? Equipment unavailability, so you use what you have, and use another piece of equipment that, a new equipment that you purchase. Anything that wasn't the normal replacement then we require a management of change. Equipment changes include, amongst other things, changes in the material of construction, the equipment specification, piping prearrangement, experimental equipment, computer program revision, and changes in alarms and interlocks, right? Again, if something was to change, I can modify. If you know what an interlock is, an interlock, well, I just use one. I mean, and you probably use one too. Today is Sunday. If you have a washing machine, your washing machine have an interlock in it, right? But like in the world of equipment, then if any like an interlock is I think it's the best example. A washing machine is an example, right? But a company example is like a guard, a fence. There are some guards in order to get to the equipment behind it. You have to take off the machine. So I don't know if I could draw, I don't want to draw it for you because it's going to take time, right? But you could put like a fence, a mesh, right? And so it's a mesh in front of the machine, but to get to the machine, you have to take off the machine and the guard could open there. If you don't take up the machine, the guard wouldn't open. That's called an interlock. It's one in which the mechanism is linked to the power function of the machine. So I was telling you like a washing machine is one, right? If you have, I guess, a spin dryer section or the spin dryer itself, right? Like if you set the timer on it and you open it, in fact, some of them wouldn't open, right? It's like some of the rinsers then, right? If you set the timer, it cannot open until the timer has come to an end. If you set 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right? You cannot open it, it's locked. So that's the same, washing machines have interlocks on them. But if you were to modify that, what I'm saying, if a company was to say, well, the interlock and the guard, it's probably, taken like we want to modify how it operates there. But then fine, if you modify the thing, then you have to follow the MOC form, right? So the idea is any modification carries, carries the interlock, right? All right. Let me see. Piping systems have interlock. Oh, pigging systems. I guess Kurt, you want to share on that a bit? I'm not too familiar with that.
Yeah, so what does take place is like is a sequence. So there's an interlock so that you need to follow the sequence. So in order for the so a pig, I think if I don't know if everybody familiar with what a pig is, but a pig is a device used to clean the pipeline.
Right.
So in order for the so what it does move from one point or one facility to the next facility. So if you're launching or you're receiving the pig, right, based on what you're doing, there are interlock systems, so you wouldn't you need the sequence need to be correct in order for the pig to launch or for it to receive the pig.
Okay.
Right? It can't be out of order then.
Yeah. Right. And so I guess it's the same idea. Because there are many, because our interlock is like a function of something. Like a washing machine functions with an interlock. The spin dryer functions with an interlock, right? So it's about the same thing. Those of us who have those automatic ones, like I said, like if you set, and it's the same thing, you set a sequence in it, a time on it, but you can't get it open unless that is finished. So that's an interlock. But I guess what I was saying is that if you modify that system, if you wanted to modify the timer, well, then that requires an MOC form. If you follow the normal sequence, well, that doesn't require an MOC because the heading here is, like changes, including amongst others, alarms and interlocks. So if you change something, if some way a technician comes in and changes something with the interlock, well, then fine, that requires an MOC. The point is change. All the rest of the examples I tell is the same thing. All the other slides is example of saying that there's a change other than normal replacement, other than the normal sequence, right? The example I gave was that if the safety manager signed the document for a year, but the safety manager left, sorry, then you have to come back and follow the MOC for that because all the forms that is dated 12 months, the guy left you, he got another job, right? That requires the MOC. Shadrach is no longer employed in Massey, so you have to come and follow the forms, right? And redo the forms and follow the MOC for that because that is a change, right? So that's the concept. If you want to read through all of this, all of these are examples. If you read all of it are examples, right? Watch it. All changes to process, plant, and design, right? This is like what you must do. So the control measures, if you have a change, consult and inform those affected by the change, both operational and changes of key workers. If anything requires new training, a new piece of equipment you bought, a new modification, you modify the thing to a different speed, but you probably need to train the workers and stuff, right? And as I mentioned, it is a form. This is a basic idea of the form. You have what is the change? Is it a change of the machine speed, a change of the machine type? Maybe you just got rid of the other one and you bought a new one. Who was the one that did that and who it is authorized? Was it the CEO? Was it a technician? Who is the MOC owner? Who asked for this change? Who created that change? And was it authorized, right? It's a very simple idea of a MOC form. Again, like a simple question I can see here is like, they can actually say there's been change to a piece of equipment, it was modified or replaced, or a new one was bought. What is the best, form? They mightn't say form, but what is the best way of capturing the change? They may give you JSA, risk assessment, MOC, hazard. The best one is a MOC, the MOC form, right? Tell me if you're okay with that one. We have, again, two simple concepts to go. Chapter 1 have these small, nice concepts, but chapter 2 is kind of more, like when you get into something in chapter 2, it's more kind of longer and it's kind of deeper too, but chapter 1 have a lot of shorter concepts, right? I think this one is 1.6. After this one, we have 1.7, right? And then that will finish it, right? So I try not to read because it's after that time and you all tend to feel sleepy. So I'll explain, right? So worker engagement, the heading is worker engagement. The benefits and limitation of consultation with workers and contractors. That's the heading, right? The benefits and limitations of consultation with workers and contractors. So I'll explain this slide. So this slide is showing you that by law there, right? Employers have a duty to consult with their employees and contractors. You have all these laws here for it. If you are a new student and you never did laboratory, there's no need to learn the laws. Just you have to know that, like in this exam, then they won't ask you what is the law, right? But there are many laws in the UK to say that the employer have a duty to consult with the employers and contractors. Those of us who did laboratory, this one would be very familiar to you all, the HSW Act, Section 2, subsection 3. We have also the Safety Representative and Safety Committee Regulation 1977, the Health and Safety Consultation with Employee Regulation 1996, and the Construction, Design and Management Regulation 2015 makes mention of somebody called a principal contractor, so the employer have to consult to them. There's no need to learn any of them, but if you want to, I'll just say over this one again, the Construction, Design and Management Regulation. If anybody writing it down, it's not an exam question. And if you never did laboratory and you don't know what HSW stands for, it stands for the Health and Safety at Work Act. Well, the year for that is 1974. The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. The bottom line is that consulting with your workers and worker engagement is a legal requirement, right? Remember the heading? The heading is the benefit. So what's the benefit of worker consultation? This is easy. This isn't a difficult concept, right? We have increased productivity. Just reading one of the top lines, right? Higher levels of workforce motivation, a healthier and safer workplace, right? Better decisions about health and safety, a stronger commitment to implementing decisions, joint problem solving. Benefits, detailed knowledge, input into all applicable process, hazards, and risk and associated controls. I think this came from a past paper. They asked what's the benefit of worker consultation, and the answer was you'll get detailed knowledge from everybody who are part of that process then, right? Input into policy development, contribution towards a positive process safety performance, worker and safety representative input in developing or redeveloping safe systems of work. It could allow for greater acceptance by the workforce. Benefits of worker consultation, critical in obtaining information and demonstrating an environment of positive PSM culture, better judgments, healthier and safe workplaces, greater cooperation and trust between employer and employee, so that overall performance of the organization improves, right? So really good stuff, clear stuff, nothing hard there to understand, right? And this was the passive. I think we did it last week too. The most important benefit of worker engagement when undertaking a risk assessment is the avoidance of conflict when risk assessments are introduced, a balanced representation of workers and managers, right? And those are correct. But what's the most important benefit, right? Compliance with legal requirements, which is also true. We saw the laws in the beginning, but the answer that Nibosh gave was detailed knowledge input regarding practical workplace hazards and risk, meaning everybody contributes there to the consultation process, right? A benefit is that we comply with the law and all of those things here, but the most important benefit is that you hear from everybody's opinion. Everybody have a say there, right? And that is it. Please remember, participants do repeat. So take note of them, right? So what's the limitation of consulting with employees? It could lead to conflict or arguments. It can be time-consuming. Employees of contractors may seek alternative means of getting the task done. Yeah, employees do that. Consultation is limited to process safety management and not anything else that can damage the employer's reputation and image. For example, a civil matter or a legal matter. If you're consulting about PSM, then stick to that, right? Like if there is a worker that was injured and you know there is a court case going on, try not to get too much into that, right? Just, kind of focus on what you're there for, which is consultation about process safety, how much inspections we should get done, who should be trained in PSM, that sort of thing then, right? Contractors, workers may have sensory impairment. They are protected under the Equality Act 2010. You can't discriminate, but then it is that sensory impairment may prevent them from hearing or seeing, some difficulty in the consultation process itself, right? Limitations of consultation can result in confidential information being leaked through the grapevine. Subcontractors may require additional information as the information passed on from their main contractor to them may get lost. It cannot get diluted in translation. You could have varying aims and objectives between the contractor's policy and the requirement of the plan that you're in, right? The contractor may have one policy and one set of ways of doing something. The company wants it done another way, right? Process safety performance indicators may be different initially to that of the contractors, but the contractors have to conform. That's the thing, right? I mean, we say consultation, but if you're in somebody's plant, you have to conform, right? So you may have your way of dealing with an emergency, but the company, the client you're working for, Proman, right? Or where again? Proman, I try to think of one in Guyana, right? Exxon. So you are a contractor and you have your way of doing a risk assessment, or you have your way of investigating an accident. But Exxon have their way, or Atlantic have their way, right? So you have to consult, and then even though you might not agree because they say limitations, the contractor should conform to that of the client because the client have the higher, normally would have, but that's your client, so that's the one paying you, so you should conform to what the client is asking. Once it is a better standard than yours, if the contractor have a better standard, which may be unlikely, if the contractor do have a better standard, fine. I guess the consultation process may reveal that, and the client should adhere to that of the contractor. That may happen. I know of an example where it happened, but it probably don't happen in all companies, right? Who do you consult with? Types of consultees, contract employees who may work turnarounds, contractors, employee representative, trade unions, HSE officials. The HSE here is the government inspectors, right? Again, if you're new to the NEBOSH fleet of courses, the letters HSE refer to the government inspectors, not your HSE officers, right? So HSE actually stands for the Health and Safety Executive, which is in London, right? So who would need to know the HSE then, for those, anybody from laboratory, remember, like who is the HSE like? Who is the HSE similar to in Trinidad and in Guyana?
The inspectors.
But what type of inspectors?
The governing body.
But what is the government? What is the governing body? Who are the HSE officers? Well, who are the HSE here? Who are they similar to in Trinidad? Say it.
OSHA.
OSHA, very good, yes, right? So for those who don't know, because we do have some people in level 4 here who didn't do the level 3, right? So like if where is the HSE in this course? That's the OSHA. That's OSHA. But in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Europe, I don't know if you know that, they don't say OSHA. They don't say OSHA. They say the HSE. America says OSHA, right? But that part of the world, Europe, that part of the world, England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, they say the HSE, right? But HSE is OSHA. So if you understand this, that as a who do you consult with? Well, you consult with OSHA. So that's a good thing, hopefully, right? So you consult with the HSE, but the HSE is the OSHA across it. So know that this is not your safety officers then. This is the government, or Adisa said, the enforcing authority officers, right? This is the government officers. All right, employer responsibility to contractors. So when selecting a contractor, the employer must obtain and evaluate information regarding the contract employer's safety, performance, and program. The employer also must inform the contractor of the known potential fire, explosion, or toxic release hazards related to the contractor's work and the process. explain to the contractor the applicable provisions of the emergency action plan. So if you are an employer, you're hiring a contractor, right? These are some of the things you must do. Employer responsibility to contractors: develop and implement a safe work practice to control the presence, existence, and exit of the contract employers and contract employees in covered process areas. Evaluate periodically the performance of the contractors in fulfilling their obligations. Maintain a contract employee injury and illness log relating to the contractor's work in the process areas. Perform a pre-startup safety review. Now, that's a passive question. They call it a PSSR, but it's like in lesson 2, right? So a pre-startup safety review for new facilities, for modified facilities, or modified facilities, I guess, when the modification is significant enough to require a change in the process safety information. All right. Hopefully you're following. If not, you'll read over, right? But what they're saying here is that the employer must ensure then the place is safe for the contractor. They must ensure the contractor is fulfilling their job, right? They should keep a maintenance of a injury, illness record log for the contractors. And before starting up, they should require the contractor to perform a PSSR, a pre-startup safety review, right? So what is a PSSR? The simplest one I could think about, I know Kern and them will know if any process industry you know. A PSSR, we could think of a tank. If you could think, let's say even your water tank at home, if you want to think of that. Or whatever you know, if you have a, like a grass cutter, a whacker at home. So like before you use it then, right? Or before you start your cars on morning, if you all do that, right? Like you do a check then, right? Like you check. I mean, tomorrow is Monday, so most persons may check, like the water, the oil, right? So that's like a PSSR that you're doing. So for the process industry, if it's a pump, a tank, a pipeline, before they put on then, before I try not to draw for you, all right? But I may have to draw, like before they put on, if this is a tank, I just run like a 1 battery tank, right? So this is a tank, of course, and this is in the oil field, and you have pipelines coming into this, right? This pipeline is normally connected to other pipelines, by the way, like a manifold system of pipeline. But there'd be like a switch somewhere, there'd be like a switch somewhere, right? And the switch mightn't be on the same location. I join it here because I can't go out of my pit here, right? So the switch would be somewhere. And there would be, like, this is a line, of course, like there would be a motor somewhere there, right? To sort of pump the oil. The motor doesn't have to be that close to the tank. In reality, these things are very far off because the pipelines are far off anyway. But I'm trying to fit everything in one diagram, all right? So a PSSR would say that, like, if this tank was cleaned, if this tank was painted over, clean, welded, before startup, the employer should require the contractor to do a PSSR. And that may include, like, locking off here. This is like the drain valve, right? If there's a drain valve on the tank, they call it a bleed valve. So before you put on the oil back into this tank, make sure that the drain valve or the bleed is closed. Make sure the pipeline is primed, if you all know what that means, prime. So you give it a start before, right? So you do a complete check then, because you don't want to put the on switch on and then you dry run the system, or you put the on switch on and then you start getting good crude into the tank, but then you left the drain valve off. So the crude started to leak out there anyway. So that's a PSSR. As I was saying, it's just like if you have any piece of equipment, like you check it before. If you like, even if it's a waka, you check it out, make sure the gas, the oil, the cord, everything is up to mark in it. That's a PSSR, right? So it's a good practice that the employer require that of the contractors then to do a pre-startup check. Again, like I said, you all do it, or we sometimes do it on a Monday morning. If your car is down for the weekend, you probably do it and as you check back the oil, you probably check the water, right? And probably the radiator, if you check all those things, power steering, fuel, you check your tires and stuff. And then, of course, you turn the ignition, right? So what you're doing there is like a PSSR, but it's a PSSR for your vehicle. Of course, that same concept is used in the process industry. And that has been a passive question. Like they would say, like, was it best way of confirming that valves have been locked off, switches have been, in the right working order? Was it best way of confirming that? And the answer is a pre-startup safety review. Did you all take down the letters? I've said it about 3 times. Right, but you'll see it again. In reality, this is not where that topic is. That topic is actually in chapter 2. But as I say it here now, instead of just reading it, we can explain it one time, right? The answer is a right? PSSR is what they call it. I put the wrong letter first. That's my mistake, yeah? I was thinking there, right? So PSSR, a pre-startup safety review, right? Okay, could I take it off and we can move to the next? I think I could try to leave that. I want to leave my tank because you can never tell when that tank come in handy as a next example again, right? But I'm moving on, right? So we had the employer's responsibilities. What are the contractor responsibility? Ensure that the contractor responsibilities, if they hire a subcontractor, are trained in the work practices necessary to perform their job safely. Ensure that contract employees are instructed in the known potential fire, explosion, or toxic release hazards related to their job and the process, and in the applicable provision of the emergency action plan. Document that each contract employee has received and understood the training required by the standard by preparing a record that contains the identity of the contract employee, the date of the training, the means used to verify that the employee understood the training, right? Like a training record, for those who know what that is, right? Ensure that each contract employee follow the safety rules of the facility. No smoking, PPE must be worn, fill out your JSA, fill out the permit to work, lockout, tag out, all those things that's required, make sure and get it done, right? Including the required safe work practices required in the operating procedure section of the standard, and advise the employer, the contractor responsibilities to advise the employer of any unique hazards present by their own work, the contract employer's work, right? So are we going to be well into then there's a fire hazard? Are we going to be getting into, isolating the ammonia line today, right? All of these things has resulted in disasters in it, right? Anyway, means of consultation, safety committees, discussion groups. This is how the contractor and the employee could talk to each other, right? Safety circles, departmental meetings, email and the company intranet, team briefings, digital media and web-based forums, for example, Skype. Well, who uses Skype anymore? Webinar, Zoom, Google Meets, Teams, whatever have you, right? Toolbox talks, right? Worker engagement priority should be given the highest priority by management as it is a legal requirement, as you all saw. Additionally, it can foster an environment of positive PSM culture, can result in fewer accidents as employees are on board with the PSM policy aims and objectives. Management should ensure that arrangements are made for engagement. What might this entail? And it would entail these same things, like you have a safety group, every Monday, you have a half an hour to talk about what you're going to do and document your hazards and stuff. All right, so the last one now, and the last one for the textbook. I don't know, you want to open the textbook on this one? We haven't opened it as yet for the day. Right? You can get it open, competence, page 20, and you can turn back if you want. Page 18, competence, worker engagement is right there as well. Page 16, if you have your book. If not, we're going to continue with the slide. It's the same thing. Same thing in the book. The book have, just a recap here, the book have, in terms of the means of consultation, the book have safety committees. Where do you think I got it from? Well, actually vice versa, because the slide was written before the textbook. I don't even know that. But when I say where do you think I got it from, I actually got it from the syllabus. This slide was written before it had a textbook. But where did I get those answers from? I got it from the syllabus. The syllabus had means of consultation would have been safety committees, discussion groups, same thing in the book. This is page 17 for those of the book. safety circles, departmental meetings, emails, and web-based forum. And I put in some others. I put in toolbox talks and stuff in it. But, as I said, if you have the book, you have the slides. If you have the slide, you have the book. Anyway, the point is, I wanted you all to open to the textbook, the competences you headed. It makes sense, right? I have said to you all, I would want you all to start reading your book. I think it's a nice read. But when you start reading it, you'll see why I say that, right? The book is not a novel. By the time you start reading this, you finish. One of the reasons is that there are lots of things in the chat, on the page, then you have things like these things that take up a lot of space. Where is it? Sorry, this one here. You have a lot of things that take up space. So like when you open page 20 and you read page 20, you read everything, you read that in 1 minute time. Because it didn't take a lot of time. It's not like a novel you're reading, right? It's a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of pictures. Those of us in the book, could you turn the book and see? Page 20. What was page 20? A passage up there and a passage down there, and then this big picture here. Watch it again. A passage there, which will show that is a passage there, and a big picture here, right? So, like, to me, I started the class by saying, yeah, I mean, the PowerPoint is there, and we got it from the book and whatever. Well, we got it from the syllabus, to be honest, right? But don't be afraid of your textbook, those of us who have it, right? Your book is actually about $400 TT. Don't be afraid of it. Don't finish the course then and you have not read the textbook, right? So, as we go along, you could have had it. I mean, you didn't have to wait for me to say open the book. You could have had it and you could have been following. You'd have seen the same thing. Means of consultation. You'd have seen exactly what I got that from, right? So you could have it and you can highlight it and it's your book. Don't be afraid of it, right? Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to carry it to work. I've told a lot of students that. Carry to your work and on lunchtime have a read, right? You'll be surprised to see how fast the reading goes. Anyway, folks, I want to continue here, right? So competence. So I'm going to read from the slide because I know at least everybody looking at the same thing. So what is competence, right? So competence, I don't think this is the definition. I'll go to the next slide, right? So competence is a combination of practical and thinking skills, experience, and knowledge. Competence in the context of process safety is defined as a set of capacities, skills, experience, knowledge, and willingness to follow rules and procedures, which would provide the necessary abilities to enable individuals to potentially perform certain tasks. I actually like the definition. Some of the words I like. Competence refer to skills, experience, knowledge, willingness, right? Now remember, it's not a memory, well, it's not a written exam, it is memory-based, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say, I've never really seen the ask you what is competence. There's something they ask here, but it's not what is competence, right? So let's read on a bit. Those of us in the book, you'll start to see some big tables like that. You see a table there, right? So if you want, I can explain this to you, right? And so what they are doing here, they are creating like a skills gap, right? So include the skills and knowledge and human factors, right? So you're creating a skills gap. And the name of that system, I don't know if you all know what we call it. We call it a training needs analysis, right? A training needs analysis. I wonder if you all know what it is, right? But it's on page 19. And I'll show you my pictures here, right? In process safety, they refer to it as a process safety competence management scheme. A process safety competence management scheme. And what it is, for those of us who know what a TNA already is, right? So I'm trying to get to the end of it, right? So but you can read up that for yourself. I'll just do the explanation. So what it is, if you look at the book and you look at the slide, they will take what you know then, or like what your position is, like what your role is, right? And they will map out some training programs for you to do based on your role for the year. The proper name for that is a training needs analysis, right? Competence training can be forecasted and planned using a training needs analysis, right? A training needs analysis template indicated mandatory and recommended training. So the operation manager, mandatory that they do process safety fundamentals. The operation manager, mandatory that they do risk assessment techniques. The operation manager, it's mandatory that they do exothermic reaction training. The operation manager, recommended that they do root cause analysis, right? So you would not be asked to construct one, but they may ask you what is the best way to improve then a worker's competence. And the answer you want to go for is like something called a training needs analysis or a process safety competence management scheme, where they take the worker, the technician, the project engineer, the EHS safety specialist, and they map out what you have to do for the rest of the year, right? Most companies do that, but most companies not in the process industry, we call it a TNA. But for exam, I've seen they say TNA, and I've also seen they say PSCMS, Process Safety Management Competence Scheme, right? So you would not be asked to draw one. That's why I didn't read all the slides before, because they would ask you what is the use of it. Remember, this is multiple choice. You're not really getting to construct one, like how the book have it, but you would get what is the way to capture competence, right? So they may say like a technician has been moved from one role to another role and he's required to undergo additional training. What is the best way to capture the competence of that worker? The answer would be a training needs analysis or a PSCMS. Well, in fact, I have two past papers here. So let's look at the two past papers that came on this one, right? So this is one of those past papers. I think I have, let me see, I think I have one question. Yeah, one question, right? But it have more. It's just that, I mean, I guess the version of the PowerPoint I use it, I remember I put some more in it, but probably the version I pull up on this computer just have one question. I don't even have one in the book. I'll show you what I'm talking about just now, right? Take a look at this one. See if you can figure this one out. It's a simple answer because we just spoke about it. So workers competently perform routine tasks on a process line. A new process will shortly be introduced that requires many different skill sets. A new process will shortly be introduced that require many different skill sets. What is the best way to help with planning to fill the skills gap? Anybody saw that? You have like what the worker should do for the year, right? So the answer could only be one thing. The answer could only be B, right? The answer could only be a training needs analysis, right? I think somebody else put it in the chat, right? That was easy, right? But I just saying, I mean, not every question may say TNA, they may say PSCMS, right? Process Safety Management Competence Scheme. But we have more seen TNA, Training Needs Analysis, than Process Safety Competence Management Scheme, right? But that's just how it is anyway. Folks, with that done, believe it or not, that is actually the end of chapter 1. For those of us with your books, if we turn to page 21 in the textbook, you have 5 questions. Maybe we can look at them. I'm looking at the time. Or maybe you can try to get them done. I think that would be the better thing to do, right? So in the textbook, page 21, there are 5 passive questions. We have actually done them because in a way, this is the same questions I have on the slide, right? Most of these are the same questions I have on the slide. As we started the lesson, then those are the questions I put back into the slide from 1.1 to 1.6, right? So as predicted, I was telling you what I did foresee that we would probably finish chapter 1. So let's make a little start of chapter 2, right? I wouldn't go too far in it, but we're probably going to reach 2.2, right? So let's go into that a bit. You'll see why. Actually, part of chapter 2 is a repeat of something in chapter 1. So it won't be too stressful as yet anyway, right? Next week when we start fresh, we'll get a little deeper into chapter 2, right? So I'm changing PowerPoints here. Right? So process safety management, PSM 2. And the first piece of this is easy. The first piece of this is like laboratory, right? So we're going to look at outline the purpose and importance of establishing a process safety management system and its key elements. We did that last week already too. We would not get into 2.2, right? It would be 2:30 just now, right? So we wouldn't get into 2.2. So establishing a process safety management system. So reasons for developing an integrated and comprehensive process safety management system. It allows for the organization of the management of process safety risk in a systematic and chronological method of working that is driven by continual improvement. It demonstrates legal compliance with the management. These set of letters here, but you can just say a UK law, right? But for those who know it from laboratory, this is the management of health and safety at work regulations 1999, but they would not ask you that, right? If anybody making notes for yourself, the management of health and safety at work regulations 1999, but they don't ask those kind of questions in this course, right? What's the reason for developing a management system? We did this last week, right? Demonstrates senior management commitment to high priority policy aims and objectives. It fosters an environment of positive PSM culture. Remember this from last week? Process safety management follows from the Occupational Health and Safety Management System in the UK, known as the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle or the PDCA cycle. This model of management is based on the idea of continuing improvement, and the same must be applied to process safety management. So remember this from last week. Now remember this was something we did last week. But if you have your book, you want to turn and you'll see it too. If you have your book, you could actually check page 24 out. Same thing, they had the reasons for developing a management system. They have moral, legal, financial. And on page 26, this is their diagram of it. I think my diagram is better. The Plan, Do, Check, Act model. Page 26, right? And so remember the purpose of this. Anybody remember the purpose of this? Is because it's the same question. It's the same kind of, even if it's kind of repeated in chapter 2. But it's the same question. What did you have to do with this? Anybody remember like what you as a student have to do with this diagram? Anyone? What you as a student have to do with this diagram? Make a guess. Anybody? I saw the course of names. There's 19 people here, 20 people here now. What do you as a student have to do with this diagram? Devin, Quincy.
You have to remember, yes, so you have to remember
Yeah.
that act for one is not it's not meant as act, but
Action for
action
improvement. Yeah, yeah.
improvement.
But yeah, but the point is you have to memorize this chart. Look, the same chart in another chapter. Right? So that, I mean, that shouldn't convince you. What should convince you is this. The past paper should convince you that you have to memorize that chart. Right? Again, those of us in the book, page 26, you can have a look at it, right? But I mean, this is a better chart. This is actually from the document itself. And as this chart looks a bit better anyway, right? So this is the same question from chapter 1. The key elements of a process safety management system follows the Plan, Do, Check, Act model. Implementation and operation aligns itself with which parts of the model. So if you go back and you check, implementation and operation falls under doing. Remember, you didn't memorize this, right? Also remember, don't try to be smart. Well, when I say smart, I mean, I wanted to be smart, but I wanted to study to be smart, right? I don't want it to be, to try any smart things that on the day of the exam, right? NIBOSH is brutal, for those of us who know that. I mean, that's why they are the standard. If you want to get it in the right way, right? Don't have anybody in your room. Don't have any textbooks open. They will see you and they will catch you, right? And there are some penalties of being caught. But if you get caught, but that means you're doing something wrong, right? I'm not saying that. So, but and I mean, I've had some students, right? So I could tell you the stories, but I won't tell you all. I'll just tell you one, right? It's like if you get caught, though, what that means though is that you waste your money. Remember, this money go to the UK, and then you waste your time. And some of the consequences of being caught is that you could get a ban from doing NIBOSH. They could ban you, right? And have students I have that get banned before, Guyana and Trinidad. Remember, we don't be there. The day for this exam, you're doing, and I'm not talking about this alone, but all the different courses, the level 3, the level 6, NIBOSHers catch you, right? With this exam, they supervise you on your webcam, right? So don't try nothing smart. Put the work in your head. The same way you're putting it in a book behind the computer screen, put the work in your head. Hide it in your head. Hide it where they can't see it, which is in your head, right? That's where you're supposed to put it. Hide it in your head, right? The last PSM exam, which was last month, right? It had somebody that couldn't get through the exam. The reason is that there were many reasons. The person had a phone in their hand. The examiner stopped the exam. Right? They had a phone in their hand. You're not supposed to, when you come to do the exam, I told you last week, sit down as if you're doing a real exam. Because it is somebody looking at you, right? You can't have a phone in your hand and then complain, right? Why it is you didn't get to finish. Well, thank God the exam, they have nothing to do with me. That's you and NIBOSH alone, right? You log on the platform and they supervise you, but everybody has had no issue. But if you see you being smart, you're hiding paper in the wall and all kind of thing, it have ways and must, there's do like a room scan. Have you turn your computer right around the room so there's no charts, there is no posters, there's no paper. Put the work where you're supposed to put it, in your head, right? Don't put it on the wall, don't put it on your leg, don't put it on your hand, don't put it on your palm. Don't draw this on your palm or your hand, right? This is a chart that you have to learn, and as we go through the course, folks, there's more things to learn by heart. Last week and this week, we know that this is something to learn by heart, but there is more things to learn by heart, right? All right, let me just bring this down here. So if a company gets, if a company gets, when we're back to this, right, gets one of these management systems certified, I don't know if you all understand that. Certified means you get a certificate for it. Well, what it means is that they can get a license to operate in certain industries, right? If you're all familiar with ISO or STO here in Trinidad and Tobago, PDCA is just like that in England, right? So you can get a license for that. You can get a license if you meet the requirement of Plan, Do, Check Act. And that license is like it's like a ticket that into most industries, right? So you see the heading is license to operate, right? So proper management of high priority risk is facilitated by the inclusion of a management system. And if you have a certified management system, then you get access, license, you get a license for it then, right? And the license says something about your business. It says that you are safe. It says then like you are ISO certified, but in England, they say PDCA. As in Trinidad, we say STOW, S-T-O-W. It's kind of like a homegrown version of PDCA. And PDCA is like England homegrown version of an ISO. Anyway, the point is if you have it and you get a certificate, you get a license to operate, access to tenders and whatever have you, right? All right, do you want to look at your book a little bit here again? So we finish up that first one. This would have been, if you have the book, you'd see, if you want to go back to page 26, it would have said license to operate. If you want, I could read that for you. And then page 26 had plan, do, check, act. They told you what went into planning, what went into doing, what went into checking, what went into acting. The paragraph on license to operate is very short, so I can read that for you all. And the next thing we want to look at is page 27. Something called, the same heading here, the same heading in the book is the same heading there. If you can see that, the purpose. I don't know if you can see it, right? Probably not. Look it down, right? The purpose. That same heading is the same heading on this slide, right? Anyway, I'll read the thing on license to operate for you. And this is my attempt to try to get you to start to read, but you know, this is a simple passage, right? So some high hazard processes such as oil and gas and some chemical processes require the operator to apply for a license in order to operate. And this is a legal required process in some countries. Licenses are not the only legal means of controlling operation, but are a very common means. In order to gain such a license or otherwise be able to commence or continue operation, the operator may have to produce a document known as a safety case, which demonstrates that all hazards with the potential to result in a major accident has been identified. All major accident risks have been evaluated. And the last one, risks are controlled to as low as is reasonably practicable. Actually, that's another concept later on in chapter 2, right? So if you have the book now, we're on to the same heading there. The purpose and typical contents of a major accident prevention policy or a MAP policy. So because it's 20 past 2, I will do the explanation, but I was trying to show you how easy the book is to read. The book doesn't have any complicated words in it. And the book have a lot of pictures. Watch this page even. This page is like a picture there. You know, it's like when you start to read, you know, when you pick up a novel is just words and words and words, not the process book. The process and the oil and gas textbook is the same sort of format anyway. There are lots of pictures, there are lots of think tanks, and by the time I start reading, I realize I read that whole book in one day. Well, less than a day, a couple of hours. When I started read, I just started reading. And in a couple of hours, I finished the book. I was like, wait, no, I didn't expect, but I'm not saying read out the book, but because it's your book, you can read what we do there, right? Anyway, let me explain. So, the purpose of a major accident prevention plan. Thinking if the reader explain. I'll read 2 slides and I'll explain, right? Because it may be the same concept as going forward, right? However, I don't think we could finish it. We could just reach about 3 slides into it. And we'll have to pick it up from here next week. Leading indicators, lagging indicators. We could probably try a question if you want, if we can do one, because we're not getting too far into this concept anyway, right? All right, let me read 2 slides for you, right? So, the purpose of a major accident prevention plan, MAP. So it demonstrates a commitment to achieve a high standard of protection for people and the environment. The MAP plan is required under another UK law called COMA, which stands for the Control of Major Accident Hazard Regulation 2015. Regulation 7 and 8 said that the employer must control major accidents in their company. It sets out the operator's overall aim and principle of action with respect to the control of major accident hazards. Your MAP document should set out your policy on the prevention of major accidents. In other words, a statement of general intent, which includes the aim and principles you plan to adopt. A MAP document, listen carefully to this one, is similar in approach to a health and safety policy document, but with 2 important additions. It must deal specifically with major accident hazards, and it must include measures to protect the environment. And I think I'll stop right there. Right? I'll do the explanation, right? So if you didn't get it, I'll read it one more time. A MAP document is similar in approach to a health and safety policy document, but with two important additions. It must deal specifically with major accident hazards, and it must include measures to protect the environment, right? So I can access, I'll stop right there for today. In terms of the work then, right? I'll just keep on explaining. So by now, right? I mean by now, because half of you all here do level 3 already. And some of us probably didn't do level 3, but you probably have an idea. So you all know most companies have like a policy for safety, right? I mean, there are many examples of it. Like some companies have it on the wall as you enter the companies. Some companies have it on their cover roll. Some companies, it's kind of stenciled onto the vans and equipment. If you have gone to most service companies in Trinidad and in Guyana, if you have gone to Gisby, you have gone to Guyana Power and Light, you would see the policy on the wall. For those of us in Trinidad, if you have gone to TNTech, if you have gone to WASA, if you have gone to Flow, the cable company, you'll see like they have a policy on the wall. So you all know most companies have a safety policy, right? The safety policy will go something like safety is my first priority. Safety is everybody's business. We will do the job safely or not at all. So you all know what I'm talking about, right? So that's what they say. The MAP policy is similar to the health and safety policy. So tell me if you remember that. Remember that a company should have a HSE policy. And as I said, you can go to any service companies, Guyana Power and Light, TNTech, and it's laminated in the side of the wall. Flow, the cable company, it's at the front of the company. It's at the front of the Flow. Flow, Flow is actually in Gulf City in South anyway. But wherever you go, they have a policy statement. So what they saying for the process safety industry, because the outcome last week we said could be more catastrophic, they say the law, if you watch it, the law is required. What it is, the purpose of MAP, and they said MAP was required by COMA. COMA is a UK law, right? So in addition to your safety policy, if your company has, well, high severity or could have high severity events then, right? What they're saying is that two of the taglines or two of the bullet points in the safety policy should be geared towards saying that your company is committed to preventing major accident hazards, and it should say you are committed to protecting the environment. If you do that to your already existing safety policy, I think what you'll come up with is what they refer to as a major accident prevention policy. So you say, we at ProMan, we are committed to preventing major accident hazards at our site. We at ProMan, we are also committed to preventing harm to the environment, chemical spills, or whatever it would have been your chemical, right? Whatever the chemical is, right? So, if you add that into the already existing policy, I think you end up with a MAP policy, right? Now, I've not seen too much of questions on these, but I have seen one or two, right? And so like over the years from 2017 to now, I've seen one or two questions, right? But they have just asked for you to name it. They have just asked for, like, what is the name of the policy that will prevent major accidents? And they have MAP, but then you may have to remember what MAP stands for. Major Accident Prevention Policy. Major Accident Prevention Policy, right? Tell me what you think. I think I'll bring the curtains down on this here. And it's 25 past 2. There's not really a need to start a new concept this late anyway, right? So let's hit the record. Well, I'll stop the record, hold the roll, and you'll see what I've been doing. I've been putting the video on the WhatsApp group, right? We normally do Google Classroom, but I would ask you all, though, I have 20 people here. I would ask you all if you all get the time. I'll put it on the group for you all when I post the video, right? To if you haven't done so already, right? If we haven't done so already, if you could, when you look at the video, please put a comment on it. If we have 20 students in class, well, somebody not here. And I think it's, well, a couple of people, I didn't see them today, and I did see Alim. I should probably stop the recording. Stop the record.